Welcome back, everybody, to the Art is Alive podcast. Today, I have someone from the OG days back in the shithole known as Gateway High School. I would like to welcome my fellow Chris Jacobs. Chris, welcome to Art is Alive.
Thank you for having me on. This is an awesome setup, and it was kind of very last minute as well.
Yeah, it was so funny how we just kind of like, at first I was like, okay, let's do next week. And then I realized, I'm already going to be in studio, so fuck it, we'll do it this week.
Right, yeah.
So, Chris, I always like to ask my guests prior to any other question, what's your background and your sort of origin story and what you specialize in?
Yeah, so my background is I do content creation sort of for like sports is kind of my target. Do sports for like NFL, football, NBA, or basketball or anything like that. So that's kind of my background, and I currently have a podcast, which is what also drew me here because I'm hoping to learn things from you, and I already have. So, the podcast is what I'm doing. I also do some like statistical videos and some stuff like that. So that's my background in terms of content creation.
We both went to UCF.
Right.
And the question I was going to ask you prior to recording is the graduation process and all of that. I kind of had like an existential crisis, and I was like, oh, that's it? Like, Mama Bird just threw me out of the nest, and I'm like, oh, fuck. Yeah. Now I'm in the true world of adulting, so I wanted to ask, like, how has that transition been from graduation to where you are today?
Yeah, I'm very blessed. I have parents that love me and have a good support system. So when I graduated, I fortunately had a job lined up in emergency management, which is what I majored in. Although it wasn't what I enjoy, it's content creation. I've been doing that for probably 6 years now, not consistently, but it was, I would say, sort of an easy transition. I don't want to sound, cocky or anything like that, but I knew that I wanted to do content creation full time, but I knew that I also had to have, an income and a job.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the hardest transition for me. I had my job, and then on the side and after hours, I was making videos whether it be video games, football videos, sports videos, or anything like that. So that's how it went. I also dabbled into streaming and everything to finally land where I'm at right now.
Which is your podcast where you talk about sports and all that. Dude, I actually had like a streaming phase once.
Really?
I was playing RuneScape, and it was fun, but I was like, I don't know, I couldn't sit for like 6 hours and play like a game, and then I didn't know how to get boots off the ground with that, but I think I'm really finding my footing with this.
Mm-hmm.
But with your podcast, where do you see it going in the next 12 months?
Wow, that's a great question. So I think I've definitely grown over these last couple months when I started my podcast.
I see the production value going up.
So yeah, it's money-wise, I've definitely put more into it than what I'm like getting out of it, but I see it as like an investment. So 6 to 12 months from now, I'm hoping I'm getting decent views still, and I'm getting some more guests. I specifically want to target like athletes, whether it be high school, collegiate, or professional athletes. I was blessed enough to have my last guest. He is the current linebacker for FAU.
I saw, yeah.
So I actually had to travel to him. So I was like, oh, let's use this as like a learning experience, traveling to guests. So I booked a hotel. The hotel had
a hotel and everything.
I booked a hotel.
Dude.
I made sure the hotel had a sofa, and it had like an L-shaped sofa. So
Okay.
then I brought all my equipment. I bought like an extra table just in case to mount his mic. And thankfully I needed that. So, that was cool. It wasn't the longest podcast, but still nonetheless, it was an awesome experience. I got to meet him and ask him questions, and I'm still learning like we talked about before we started. I'm still learning as an interviewer, like as a host. So that's definitely awesome. But to answer your question, 6 to 12 months from now, I definitely want to still be interviewing, athletes and still like making a name for myself.
Do you have anyone in mind?
Oh,
yo, we could get Dennis Briggs.
So
shout out to Dennis
Briggs, bro. I've texted him like 2 or 3 times. Once, because he just transferred to Illinois to play football over there. And before he was at FSU, for any context. So I texted him. He was like, "Oh, I can't. I'm at Illinois. Just started like spring training." I was like,
"Go to Illinois."
I was like, "All right, that's cool, whatever." And then he was back here in Kissimmee for like a whole week, And I ended up texting him like, yo, I see you're in Kissimmee. You want to do the podcast? He's like, oh, I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm like,
Bro.
damn. So I'm like, I'm going to get you on the show. So Briggs, I definitely want to ask him a lot of questions because he went to Florida State and he played Division I football and has all these kinds of experiences. And then also he was in the football locker room when Florida State got left out of the top 4. I don't know how much you know about that, but that was a big talking point and very controversial.
Oh, so to get his perspective on all that.
Yeah, because he experienced it. So I wanted to ask him a bunch of questions on that.
No, yeah, totally. And with you being a content creator and me kind of dipping my toes into that world more frequently, it's tough.
Yeah, it
that
is.
shit is so like there's so many barriers that you have to break within yourself, as well as just you have to constantly, be reaching out to people. You need to come up with all these different ideas that sort of stretch the boundaries of what you're comfortable with. And what would be your message to someone that kind of wants to jump into the world of content creation, but they don't know where to start? Or, maybe they've been in the world of content creation, but they kind of get kicked around so much. What's some words of encouragement you would want to give to someone?
I will start off with a word, and then I will dive into it, is consistency. And as you just touched on, trying to find guests, trying to even just put out content once a week it sounds easy when you first start, and you're going to start off I call it a 2-week phase with everything, whether it's working out, whether it's playing the same game, whether anything. I call it a 2-week phase. You start off, you're so excited, you do it, you're like, oh, this is awesome. And once that 2 weeks hit, you're like, oh, do I, like, you kind of hit a wall, and you're like, okay, now I really got to put in the work. So consistency, but words of advice is, if you want it, you gotta like go all in for it. You gotta do something. You really have to put in that work because it's tough. I've been doing content creation, like I said, for 6-7 years, but over the last year and a half is when I really found my niche in like sports. So it's been a lot of hard work and a lot of just not wanting to put out content, as bad as that sounds. And you're gonna have those days where you don't want to sit down and edit and you don't want to create a video. But as simple as it sounds, you gotta just do it.
Yeah. And it kind of, if you hit that 2-week wall and you're like, I really don't want to keep doing this content creation stuff, maybe it's not for you. Like I was telling you earlier, back when I was pursuing like wanting to be an actor and all that,
Right.
I didn't wake up and I wasn't like, yeah, let's go audition. It's like, no, like maybe this isn't for me. So maybe then it's just sort of weeding out what you want with your life, and maybe it's not for you.
Yeah, especially for content creation, I've always loved just creating stuff, whether it be like on TikTok, whether it be just making people laugh. Like I know you like making people laugh as well. So whether it just be those simple things, if you genuinely like have a passion for it and you want to chase that, at the end of the day, I always tell people like sometimes you got to do things you don't want to do, like when it's a bad day and when you're not motivated. Like sometimes you just got to get the hell up and you just got to do it, and you got to continue to grow and post. And it's hard. It can be really hard, but just staying consistent and just trying to find ways to stay motivated as well.
Dude, fuck yeah. Spitting bars. So, Chris, I want to thank you for being on Art is Alive.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
So you guys can find me at I'm Chris Jacobs. That's my name. So you can find me on YouTube, on TikTok, that's pretty much all I really post, and then here on Instagram where you guys are watching this video. So that's why I post. I have my sports podcast, and then I do like sports content and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you for having me on. I know we just wrapped up. I want to tell the people what I've learned from you, if that's okay with you.
Go for it.
Okay. So, like I was telling you before, I only have one camera, and when you first started your podcast, I noticed that you had 2 cameras. I was like, well, how can I learn from this, and how can I make this a little bit better, even though I'm not going to go out spending more money for another camera?
Not yet,
right? Yeah. Shout out the Sony that he was talking about.
Sony A6400.
There we go. If you haven't, go check it out. So I was like, okay, how can I learn? So I was like, let me take my one frame and like divide it into 2 different frames and focus on that. So I've learned things from you. You can learn things from everyone, whether it be people that are more successful, not saying you're least successful, or like people that are not as successful. You can learn from everyone, whether it be on blogs, YouTube, social media has a bunch of ways. So just wanted to point that out.
Chris, I appreciate your words, man. Appreciate you coming all the way out to Labs.
Yeah.
And until next time, guys, this has been Art is Alive. See you next time. Cut.
Nice.
Let's
Awesome.
go.
That was awesome.
Thanks, man.
I loved it.